In this presentation, I will be talking to you about the decline of the Hollywood movie industry after a golden period in the 1920s. The film industry in the United States was booming due to the rise of the studio system in Hollywood. This is when massive film studios produced big blockbuster films that gave birth to numerous stars, such as John Wayne, Joan Crawford, Charlie Chaplin, or Katharine Hepburn. In this period after 1920, there were five dominant movie studios nicknamed the Big Five, and they were MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, RKO, and Fox. These five studios essentially had a monopoly on the American film industry and dominated theaters by releasing over 200 films a year. Films were the dominant form of leisurely entertainment in America with the rise of silent black and white films, then the talkies as sound technology was introduced, and later motion pictures with full colour. Films were at first not seen as a suitable form of leisurely entertainment by some, as it was deemed to be a waste of time and money. This was certainly the case after the Wall Street crash in 1929 as the country entered the Great Depression. This brought a lot of conflict and debate over the use of leisurely time due to the rise of unemployment and lack of jobs available to the public. Critics argued that films were detrimental as they portrayed unrealistic values or unobtainable goals to its viewers. Films were becoming increasingly violent and more realistic as the technology improved. This was the case with the original Scarface movie that was released in 1932, which was banned in 5 states upon release. This was not the only problem that surrounded the Hollywood film industry at this time. Whilst going to the theatre was mostly an inclusive social event, this was not always the case, particularly down south, as African Americans were segregated within the theatre or otherwise excluded entirely. Black actors were also not common at this time, and sometimes the production studios would hire white actors with blacked up faces to play African American characters in films, as seen in The Birth of a Nation. This was happening in spite of the promotion of movies as a friendly social event for all to enjoy. However, most would argue that this was not the full picture of the Hollywood film industry, as films did become more family-friendly in the 1930s. This was due to the introduction of the Motion Picture Production Code in 1930. This outlined the family-oriented production values that the Hollywood studios had to abide by when producing their movies. This code placed the responsibility on the studios to produce films that were morally and socially correct, as they would influence the viewer's thinking. As more and more people started to view films, the production companies were becoming increasingly influential in American society. The film industry also provided a lot of opportunities for men and women, both young and old, to star in films. This was in a time when finding work was hard due to the economic crash, as many businesses went bust. The large scale of productions allowed for job opportunities as casting calls reached out to a variety of people. This was beneficial to the economy as a whole, as it got people working, and it led to consumption of movies in the theatre, which led to even more revenue. The Hollywood film industry in the 1930s was the most profitable industry in this period in American history. Due to the Great Depression, most families could not afford to spend much on leisure, and going to the pictures was a cheap, affordable source. Some theatres even started to lower ticket prices and show double features to gain even more sales. It is estimated that over 75 million Americans attended the theatre each week during the Depression. The big studios were very effective in promoting movies as a suitable form of leisure despite what the critics were saying. It gave birth to the rise of prominent filmmakers such as Walt Disney, who started the Walt Disney Company in 1920, and he went on to create such beloved characters such as Mickey Mouse through his films. The film industry was really thriving, and it was due to the Hollywood business model. The movie studios were enjoying their massive success well into the 1940s as they had a complete monopoly on the industry. This was due to the system of vertical integration, as the studios had exclusive contracts with theatres, actors and even directors, thus controlling everyone involved. The studios even owned the majority of the theatres in Hollywood, and this prevented any newcomers from displaying their films. This was about to change as theatre owners and independent movie makers started to take action in order to end this studio empire. The US Supreme Court got involved in a landmark case in 1948 called the United States versus Paramount Pictures. This ruling essentially stated that the big studios had to sell their theaters and end all exclusivity rights. This would change the Hollywood studio system forever and effectively end the golden age of films. It would also give life to the birth of the television industry in America as TVs became more affordable to own. The network industry began to grow as more content for TV was being produced due to it being cheaper and more financially successful. No longer did families have to go out of their way for leisurely entertainment, they could get it right in their living rooms. It also gave birth to the rise of independent filmmakers and more film studios in Hollywood that would produce a variety of films never seen before. However, the lasting effects of this Supreme Court case were felt as theatre audiences declined from around 90 million in 1948 to around 46 million in 1958. Meanwhile, the audience for the television industry grew to an estimated 204 million. The Hollywood film industry was changed forever, and the television industry gave way to a new form of leisurely entertainment in America.